Hi, I'm Radical Coder. This is Umbreon. And real quick, before we dive in, if you want to make sure this little dude stays fed and warm, drop a like, hit subscribe, and let me know in the comments what I got right, what I got wrong, or what you want to argue about. Let's go.
Catechal rotor.
What's up, Tom Foolery?
What's up, bro? Did you ever see my video, my Candace Owens documentary?
I haven't actually watched that one, but I've been meaning
Wow.
to. It's on my watch
Oh
later
my
list. I'm sorry,
goodness.
Tom.
Over a
I know. I
year
can't
later,
believe
it's sitting on the.
I'm going to do
Okay,
it to you like this.
sure. It's
But
totally gonna get to
yeah.
it.
It's there with
So
like 4,000 other videos.
So one of the things that I talk about in there is that like the way that like Nick Fuentes and Candace Owens a lot of times like evade the term anti-Semitism is where they do take it to this hyperbolic level of hate, that it has to be hatred of Jews, and that's always the level, so that if they have Jewish friends, if they have black friends, if they have any of these things, it can never be anti-Semitism, because obviously if they hated Jews they wouldn't have Jewish friends. And actually that is true. Like, this is why the whole like I have black friends excuse doesn't actually work. It's because it's not really just about hatred, it's about unfair discrimination.
Yeah. Um, I mean, I agree that like racism and anti-Semitism can both have that like underlying
I guess
the
just for
kind of
chat,
like the
he was just
attitudes
for chat.
underlie both.
Sorry,
But sorry, go ahead.
Coder was in chat earlier saying that he disagreed that anti-Semitism was like all of these other things. He thinks it is like a hatred of Jewish people. That like he thinks it is about the hatred of Jews, and that's what anti-Semitism really is. And that anything else is just uh, it's just a
Okay,
side
well, you
effect
don't have to add
of
all the
the
extra
hatred.
stuff.
But yeah,
But
I'm just saying, like, this is where
I
we're
think
at
that like
right
the
now.
driving
So I
force
want to make
more.
sure they're caught up to
Yeah,
the
yeah,
little
sure.
back and
Sort of.
forth we had in chat. So yeah.
Yeah. So what I started, just to be clear about what I think about it, like I think that like I started kind of from the perception that like anti-Semitism usually could could be effectively just replaced with the phrase Jew hatred. Like I think that generally that's I think that's, and I still think I largely hold that position. I think the definition you shared, like pointed me to, was a more nuanced one, and so I definitely agree that like anti-Semitism is also can emerge in like systemic discriminatory ways. But I think that usually, like when I talk about racism, I'm not just talking about like people who have like weird feelings about black people. We're usually talking about like systemic racism, right? Um, Although I mean that obviously comes from the underlying or it like emerges from those underlying values at some point. But I guess like when it comes to Hasan, I mean, if we're not, I don't know if we're specifically talking about Hasan, and but
Well, I mean,
like what are the
I want to
things
like
that point to
explain
him
this
having that
part.
underlying value?
Yeah, I
Yeah, go
want to
ahead.
explain this part first, because I would say this is the same for all of these labels, whether we're talking about homophobia, transphobia, anti-Semitism, racism. Like, all of these things are really at the core about unfair discrimination, and that what you're doing, what I would say, is the opposite direction, where you're saying it all comes from hate, and then that the hate would like, or prejudice, or what would make it to where they are more likely to unfairly discriminate against these people. I would say it's the opposite. I would say like the only reason prejudice is considered racist is because the prejudice is unfairly discriminating against them. It is they unfairly hate this group of people for, they're not treating them the same as everybody else. They don't feel the same as everybody else. This, even that prejudice, is an unfair discrimination. And so all of these at the end come down to just unfair discrimination, and that's what we're always talking about in these things.
Uh, okay, I see. I think I went to the last part. It doesn't feel like it follows to me, where it says it's that's that we're always talking about it feels like there's still like is that distinction between like the specific attitudes and the actual like institutional part of it, right?
Well, no,
Like that distinction exists.
but the institutional part of it, like to me that's a separate thing. Like if we're talking about so when we talk about like systemic racism, right? What are we talking about in systemic racism? We're talking about disproportionate outcomes for a specific group of people. So what are we saying? We're saying that the systems discriminate against that group of people. That like it's always coming down to discrimination based on some sort of characteristic, whether it's racism, whether it's homophobia, whether, you know, whatever. All of these terms are just describing unfair discrimination.
Yeah, but I guess what I'm saying is like that discrimination comes, or at least was like put into laws when it comes to racism, specific like systemic racism. It was instituted into laws because of the underlying belief that like black people were, so like they were so fundamentally different, like that race was this real category, and I think that's also like tends to be
fundamentally different.
Like
I think of sound
I kind
like
of
unfair discrimination.
Well, sorry. Yeah, I see what you're saying, but I guess I'm kind of processing this in real time. I don't have like an incredibly strong position on like what I'm coming up here to argue for. Just for the record,
The reason that I argue this is because I do get frustrated with the hatred part getting thrown in there all the time, because I think that is always an easy way for people to weasel out of things. And so anytime we talk about somebody being racist, lots of times they're just unfairly discriminating and they don't actually hate that group of people. I would say Nick Fuentes probably doesn't have this like strong hate for Jews, but I would say that he has a bunch of flawed beliefs because of a bias against them, to where he ends up like rewriting history and going through all of this historical revisionism to justify these beliefs later, that obviously these later down the line, this leads to an unfair discrimination. And so, the hatred, I don't even know if that's actually there, because he really is friends with a number of Jews. Like why would you say when we say somebody's racist and they say, but I have black friends, like how would you say that that's not a justified argument?
Why would I? Sorry, I was thinking about what you said right before that, and now I've got to think about why I would say that race is the black friend thing doesn't tell people. Okay.
Sorry, I'm asking because I would say. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
I think what I'm concerned about is the reason this comes up to me is because I think about the difference between like a Nick Fuentes character and a Hasan character, and like when we're talking about anti-Semitism, it feels like we're talking about something very, very different when we're pointing at Hasan or anyone, or the general like the pro-Palestinian activist people. Like they seem to have the fundamental values. They don't seem to be about Jewish people. They don't seem to be about Jewishness or Jews by any means. You know what I mean? Like they just don't. It just doesn't seem to be about Jewish people. It seems to be about like what they perceive, and what I'm sympathetic to this belief that they're concerned about a settler colonial project that is Israel.
Okay. If we look at somebody who's owned a business in a very proportionate area on different races, and they live in the suburbs of New York, and they've owned this business for like 50 years, but they've only ever hired white people, but they're married to a black woman. I wouldn't say this person's probably racist, but I would say their hiring practices have a racist outcome. And so it doesn't matter whether or not they have this like hatred towards black people specifically, but there is this outcome that is consistently negatively hurting them. And I think that when we talk about systemic racism, we're always talking about these outcomes of there's all of these names where people have these biases against black people because they see a black name on an application, and then they became less likely to hire that black person just because their name was Shaniqua or something like that. we never say that
what's the
person
outcome?
is like necessarily like they don't hate them, but they probably seen a lot of like media where black people are portrayed as like gangsters, or they're always portrayed as like low income, poor, less educated people, to where even though they have that bias there that exists, it's not a hatred. It is just a bias against the group of people. And so then we can see that throughout all of these outcomes. I think that consistently with Hasan, we're looking at a bunch of outcomes where he seems to consistently rewrite history in a way that is always like ignoring a lot of the oppression that Jews have been through. And always everything seems to be like the most malicious whenever it's from Israel, and anything that would give them any sort of benefit of the doubt, or anything that actually does land on their side, it seems to be rewritten or ignored.
Okay, I think I see. I guess what I'd ask is, what if there wasn't the specific conflict between Israel and Palestine? What other, do you think there would be other ways that Hasan would manifest anti-Semitism, or that someone like Hasan
I don't
would?
know,
So
because I've said that like this seems to come out. This seems to be born out of a hatred for Zionism, and that the hatred for Zionism leads him to end up with the historical revisionism and things like that. To where, like last night in the debate, there were a couple of examples of this where they're talking about the expulsion of Jews from all these countries. And he keeps saying, nah, they weren't expelled. They weren't being oppressed, dude. They weren't running from anything. They were going to do Zionism. Like, that's all it was. They just wanted to go to Israel. They were leaving Iraq and all of these countries because they just wanted to go do Zionism. And that's just so blatantly untrue. Yes, it's so fucking ridiculous. But it seems like that is just the outcome that exists there. And that, I would say, for anybody, even if they're fucking Jewish and they love Jews and their family's Jewish, if they deny the fucking Holocaust and they go through this whole historical revisionism to do that, just the outcome of this like opinion, that just is anti-Semitic. They don't have to have these other feelings towards them. It's just the outcome of this sort of opinion that just is anti-Semitic. And I think that Hasan has the same outcome when it comes to his large platform and the influence that he has on his audience.
So when it comes to the Holocaust example, like I kind of was saying this in chat, but I think like the reason that even the reason those outcomes emerge from like Holocaust denial is because the implication of that, like that if the Holocaust is overstated or is a lie, as you know, like the Nazi types always put forth, like that implies that the mischievous Jews have been lying to us all, you know, like, and so therefore it implies that, you know,
a lot of things that have come from their oppression, you know? A lot of things that we would justify based on their oppression, all of that disappears. And I feel like that's the same when we're talking about all of these people flooding to Israel at that time, in the ways that they were being oppressed, in the ways that they were being treated, in the ways that they were being expelled. This totally like gets rid of all of the justifications that we would have for them needing a safe space in this moment in time.
So what you're saying, I think I understand. So like the implication of Hasan's statement there would be that it would be similar in that, like, oh, this speaks to like the nature of these Jews going to do this thing, like just because they just love Zionism in their core, you know, like that's I can see
it's, which is weird too, right? We're talking about people who have like they've lived, their families for generations have lived in like Iraq and Syria. They've lived there forever, and now he thinks, well, Zionism's happening now. So now they're just going to pick up their entire lives and move it because it's happening now. They're in the middle of a war, but who cares? Like, we want to go so badly, and this is kind of like the way that people think about immigrants coming to America today, where they're talking about all these immigrants coming over here to get their free welfare and their debit cards and their free houses and everything. And it's like, even like, bro, you're talking about people truly going through some of the most horrific passages, dealing with coyotes, dealing with, like, having to swim through trenches and shit, going through like some of the most dangerous pathways they could to try to get here. And you think they just felt like one day, like, I just want to go and just live over on that side of the border for some fucking welfare and just fucking everything else in their life. Just don't give a fuck. Like, that's the way it comes off to me. It comes off as like this very MAGA-esque argument that just has this want for them to be just bad guys.
I guess I mean, I see that comparison, but I think there is that big difference about like the immigrants aren't coming here, like, especially like illegal immigrants aren't like colonizing us, like there is a difference in kind to what, like, the nature of the immigration that we're referring to.
Sure, I'm not.
But also,
I'm not comparing those aspects.
I think it is fair enough. Yeah, no, I understand you're not. I think it's worth noting. But I also understand that, like, Hasan simplifying the struggles that the people were facing when they decided to go to Israel, and like the oppression they were facing and why they made that decision. Like, I think it's like downplaying that is it's ignorant to say the least. But I still, it all just feels so different in kind to me, than the kind of stuff I hear from. I feel very uncomfortable. I know that, like, Nazis use like pro-Palestinian stuff as like a bludgeon against Jewish people, but I don't feel like it like when I am trying to make a character judgment in regards to these things, and like what somebody's goals are and what they're trying to do, and whether or not I'd be willing to, like, stand alongside them in any political capacity. Like, I wouldn't trust I wouldn't trust, like, Nick Fuentes' intentions in terms of him making, like, pro-Palestinian arguments, but I don't feel that same way about someone like Hasan. And I wonder if you think I should feel different about that, or if people, like, if there is something more, like a way that like that gap is more bridged than because honestly I'm fairly, I mean, I know I'm sure more than the average person, but like fundamentally I feel very ignorant about like Israel-Palestine history. So I'm really just like exploring this stuff in real time. But it feels so different.
I think, like I said, it is a difference. There is a difference, and this is. I don't want to get too much into the semantics, but this is my problem with the way that people use these words. Is because lots of times, if we call somebody anti-Semitic or we call them racist, everybody immediately starts saying they are hateful. They're a hateful person, or blah blah blah. And I feel like, yes, that just always gives them this very easy out, because now saying I have black friends really is a good argument. But the bias alone, to me, is enough. Like, when I listen to Hasan is very quick to just blame Israel for just about anything, right? And give Hamas the benefit of the doubt for just about anything. Like, do you remember the bombing of the Al-Aqid hospital, where he did the whole, like, JDAM?
On, like, asserted right away that it was.
Yes.
I remember that one.
Yes, and the, like, the numbers of people that died, and he seems to believe reporting from Hamas and from the Palestinian Authority, and, like, numbers that they put out, and, like, just every little thing. I don't believe fucking, like, Israel for shit, but I don't believe them either. Like, I feel like believing any of these people is like believing Trump or fucking Putin when they're arguing with each other. Like, it doesn't. It's just, yeah, you can't take one side over the other. So I think that this is. I think that lots of times we get a bunch of examples like that from him. There was the shit with the fuck. There was the
I guess
example of
that
like
actually.
the prisoner trade recently, where they had killed some of the prisoners, and then they gave over a dead person, and Israel realized this was the wrong dead person. They didn't even tell them that this person was dead, and they give them a casket instead. And they're like, What's this casket?" And they're like, "Yeah, she died, dude. So it's fucked up, huh?" And so they take the casket, they go look at it, they realize this isn't even the person they say it is. So then they go back and tell Hamas. They're like, "Oh, okay, yeah, maybe. Hold on." And then they go and find another fucking casket and give it to them. And they give them the right one this time. Yes, the Biba's mother. And yeah, Hasan again was like, I forget exactly what his defense was of this, but oh yeah, that's right. He kept saying that the IDF bombed them, that the IDF killed them, or something like that. It's just that there's always this like willingness to jump to conclusions without the evidence there, and I feel like that is often what these like when we're looking at anti-Semitism or racism or any of these things, it is this bias that drives them to believe misinformation that there's not as much evidence for, and historical revisionism that there's not as much evidence for.
I see what you're saying there, but I guess again it comes back to, it feels like that bias that exists is about like, and it is a bias that steers him wrong, it seems. It seems like it's a bias against the state of Israel, the governments of
the Zionism, correct?
And for sure, yeah, Zionism, yeah, sure, but when I think about the bias coming from like Fuentes and stuff, like it's against Jewishness.
They are different. Again, they're different. We're not saying that they're the same. I'm using them as examples to just talk about the outcomes, but I don't think that like if somebody just says, "Well, I'm just really against crime," that's all it is. That's why I have all of these biases against black people. Like it doesn't mean much to me that they have like a bias against crime, and that's why they have all these thoughts on black people. Like it's still the same outcome in the end.
But I think there's just a lot of people who feel similar to how Hasan presents these things and have these biases towards Israel, but they just all have nothing to do with Jewishness.
I don't,
not all, I shouldn't say all there, but like a lot the people I'm thinking of, you know, I'm like definitionally specifying the people who don't have a problem with Jewishness. I feel like there's a huge amount of these people who have those same biases, who just their biases towards Israel have nothing to do with Jewishness.
Okay, do you think Ethan is a Zionist?
I don't know. I didn't even watch that full video. Like, and I don't dislike Ethan or Hasan, frankly. Yeah.
I don't really like. I can't stand Ethan. I think he's fucking bad faith, and I think he's obnoxious as fuck. But
he can be annoying. Yeah.
He has said from the beginning that he thinks this is a genocide. He's been very outspoken about his support of Palestine. He's supported, donated to support Palestinian causes. And he doesn't seem to actually defend Israel or Zionism at any point, but they all call him a Zionist. Why do you think they don't? Nobody's ever called me a Zionist. Nobody's ever called me a Zionist. I would say I'm a bit more defensive of Israel than Ethan is, but still never called a Zionist. I feel like it's because he's Jewish. I feel like because he's Jewish, they just call him a Zionist. The smallest little bit of dissent from the left wing isn't always called Zionism. But with Ethan, it is called Zionism. It's strange.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I could see things, I could be shown things rather that would convince me that like Hasan or people were doing that in regards to Ethan, or that there are people in those audiences that are different than what I'm specifying. I just think there's a lot of people who get lumped in to this, like who their like fundamentally their issues and what their concerns and all the stuff regarding this conflict just have literally nothing to do with Jewishness. You know what I mean? Like, or like they just, it
Yeah,
has
sure, a
nothing
lot
to
of
do
it.
with that, and that's why it's weird to call that
A lot of it, but
anti-Semitism.
I agree. But I think again, like a lot of people that we would call racist, even like ethnostatists and shit like this, a lot of them would say like, you know, their complaints have nothing to do with
They
like
would say that.
blackness. Yes,
They
but
would say that.
but a lot of times it actually is true. They don't actually have a problem with blackness. They have a problem with crime, and that because crime exists now, they want to get away from fucking black people. They really do believe that black people just are more dangerous and that they are hurting more people. They really believe these things. So it doesn't change the fact that like there's a secondary factor that is leading them to discriminate against black people. It's just the discrimination in the end that matters. And we say all the time with systemic racism, there doesn't have to be a person within systemic racism that is racist. They don't ever have to be racist. Like the person who's hiring people and they just have this like social conditioning to think of people with black names as, you know, less educated and shit like that. We wouldn't say this is a like, you know, somebody who hates black people, but we would still say that these are racist outcomes.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I agree with that.
And I feel the same way about transphobia. I think that like especially all of these Christians who like have a problem with the like what they call the gender ideology. Growing up a Christian, I know we did not hate trans people. Like more than anything, we wanted them to get saved. We wanted them to find God. We wanted them to like come to the light. You know, yeah, but yes, but we didn't like hate the person for being trans. It was just the transness was considered bad to us, but it's not yeah, it's just like these are all like there's always these, and it's not even the transness in and of itself, but the external factors of this is breaking down, you know, gender roles, and now that's going to break down the you know the nuclear family, and that's going to break down having weddings, and you know it's all of these like external factors that are causing these problems that they're actually against, but we still call all this transphobia in the end.
Yeah, I'm wondering if maybe something that's happening is, I think we're maybe each have been, or maybe I'm using the word hate in a slightly different way. Like, cause like for that example, like the transphobia, it seems like the thing that people would be hateful of is the transness,
The
as
transness,
they perceive it to
sure.
be the cause of all those things, right? Like,
Sure.
yeah, like they're like, oh, transness causes
not the
all these
trans
things,
person,
so they
but the
transness.
transness. Yes, correct.
Yeah. And so to bring that back to the or when it comes to racism, like it's that they think that the root of like why the people are doing crime is because of their blackness. It's because they're black. It's like that's the thing they think is like what's driving them to do crime. And again, finally, like to the anti-Semitism thing, it seems like the thing that I'm more concerned about is people who think that there's something about Jewishness that's causing
when you say
people
Jewishness,
to be,
that's a little complicated because if we say Jewishness in terms of the okay, I was gonna say because if we say in terms of the religious factor, the religious factor is 100% pushing this. It is a definite like a you know mechanism behind all of this where they are supposed to have the new Israel where the second coming happens and like and the third coming all of these you know so that is definitely
like it very strongly. It's crazy.
Are you Jewish?
But no, I'm not. But I've like Christian fundamentalist people or Mormon.
My family believes this very heavily as well. Yes,
like that, like Jesus is going to come back after I think all the Arabs are gone from there, basically. Which is yeah. So they're which is weird. They're like trying to bring about the apocalypse, basically.
Well, kind of, yes, kind of.
Angle to this.
Yes, kind of. They actually they would have. It would be like in the middle of them like fucking warring in the apocalypse and everything. They would he would come back, and this is my dad. I think it's like part of the reason that I think he like almost tacitly supports Trump because he believes he's the Antichrist, and this is going to lead to like the you know the end of it. So yeah, this is
yeah.
But
again, I guess to finally land that, like why those three examples and why I'm differentiating them, like from like at least the progressives that I would be more sympathetic to. I think there's a lot of people who like their concern has nothing to do with that underlying ness in any regard. It's just like they perceive a colonial project happening, and they think that there's one side of that that's in the wrong, and that their bias emerges from that, and that's probably in a lot of ways like an undereducated position, and I feel that myself when I whenever I learn more nuances, although I still lean towards that position. I do see more nuances, but like it just has nothing to do with either the ethnicity of Jewishness. I mean, I guess you could say it has something to do with the religion based on that point. But that would also speak to like the Christian evangelicals that we would have the same problem with, right? Like, so that's where it seems to disconnect from an anti-Semitism.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure. I wasn't actually making the point that like it like is always born out of these things. Again, I think that like the outcomes are the more important aspect here, and that same when we talk about like white supremacy and things like this, whiteness, like we're always just kind of looking at the outcomes of actions and how they work. There's nothing inherently wrong with telling a black person that you like their hair, but there's just these outcomes that happen to exist that lead us to draw conclusions from it. And so yeah, there's that seems to be like a consistent way that we look at a lot of these things, but there's a disconnect when all of a sudden we start making things about like hatred, whereas like a strong feeling of like a resentment or dislike towards a group that in this case we're going to be considering unfair and discriminatory. Like these are things that I don't find to be necessary at all.
So I guess where would you identify that part of it in the progressive, like pro-Palestinian, in terms of the ones that I'm like more specifically focusing on? Like, do you think that there is that sort of phenomenon there?
No, not all the time. I don't think that like it's always there. Like I don't think being pro-Palestinian is anti-Semitic or anything. No, not at all. I think that like with Hasan, we're talking about like a pattern of behavior that we just notice over time, and that like, you know, him having on the Houthi kid who did have like a bunch of anti-Semitic rhetoric on his like Instagram and Twitter and stuff, and the fact that he was a Houthi and Hasan platforms him but doesn't really talk to him about like any of the important aspects of being a Houthi. It's all, you know, just random shit
that
about.
Was insane.
Yes. There's that.
Do you know One Piece? You watch SpongeBob?
Correct. Yes.
Crazy.
There's that. Then there's like people bringing up the fact that Hasan platformed him, and he keeps just downplaying it, saying like, I'm not responsible for other people that I platform, which I know he doesn't believe that. I know for a fact he doesn't believe that, because he literally turns around and like goes at Ethan in that debate for having conversations behind the scenes with Dan Saltman, who's friends with Destiny, and that by like through 2 levels of separation, he is then getting information from Dan that is connected to Destiny. And so he is now platforming information that is connected to Destiny by 2 levels of separation. That this is like bad platforming for him, yet like that somehow is so horrible, yet he doesn't think the same thing of like actually having on an actual Houthi. There was the Nazi sword, which like it's not a Nazi sword, okay? It's a fucking like anime sword that happens to look like a swastika. Right?
I know it's from Bleach,
Yes, but again, if Nick Fuentes,
season 1 of Bleach, I like season 1.
If Nick Fuentes held this fucking sword in a picture, nobody would give a fuck that this was an anime sword. Literally nobody would give a fuck. If we would not care at all if Elon Musk took a picture of himself holding that sword and posted it on Twitter. We would all be like, yeah, we know what the fuck that is, bro. We know what that is. And so it's like over and over and over and over and over. There's never these like caught red-handed things. There's just a ton of things that are patterned. Right. That's what I'm saying. Yes, that's
Like
what I'm saying. Is that these are never. It's
but
never one thing by
with Hassan, the
itself.
pattern
It's
doesn't
a
seem to be
pattern.
anti-Jewish. But with Hassan, the pattern doesn't seem to be anti-Jewish. At least from my perspective, it seems to be an anti-Israel bias, which is the distinction I'm trying to hammer down. And I'm not saying that it was like it seems kind of stupid to put that sword in that picture and not be self-aware enough to like see how it could be interpreted that way. It could be perceived as like kind of, and I'm not saying this is what was happening, because it sounds like a cope a little bit, but like it feels almost like a troll at people who are unfairly, or who they perceive to be unfairly, calling them anti-Semitic. Like they're like, oh, you think we're Nazis, and you're even gonna say that we're Nazis because of this bleach sword. Like it's like a which is still I think they're still gaslighting there, but it's a fundamentally different thing to what if Nick Fuentes were to hold that sword, or
But
Elon.
but that's why we talked
CL,
about it earlier. That like a lot of times, like the introspection that exists afterwards, where like I make racist jokes all the fucking time. I say them all the time, and if people come and say like, you see how people could like start to think you're racist after hearing all of these racist jokes and shit like that, I would obviously be like, yes, of course, that makes sense. Like I totally get it. Like I'm not going to deny that. I think that there are a bunch of other things in there that exist, like that I do believe in systemic racism, that I am like advocating for these things, that I did like march with BLM, that I did do this, like I have like a ton of other things in there that really break up those patterns. And for Hasan, there just never is that like thing that breaks up the patterns. It's never it just doesn't ever seem to actually exist. And so the pattern just flows straight through. And that's why if you hold up the bleach sword, it makes sense that would be a troll. But then afterwards, you would be like, yes, of course. Like, yeah, of course. Like, that makes sense. We're in a video responding to a guy who thinks that everything against him is anti-Semitic. And so we're just kind of like, playing into that. But I get like why that also makes it look worse. Like that you would actually be capable of recognizing the nuances there. And he just doesn't ever seem to be capable of doing that.
Yeah. And I can see that. I can see those being like good criticisms of Hasan specific, but even then, I'm still not really convinced that Hasan like has an anti-Jewish bias, like from any of that necessarily. But I see it like I see criticisms of Hasan in all of this that are valid, but again, it just, to me, like it's hard to map them on to him having a problem with Jewish people in the same way.
So what is
I know you're not saying
the Jewish people getting kicked out of Iraq, where he's saying that like what, and all of those other countries, he like it was not like, this isn't a thing that is a hatred for Zionism, like, but he blames Zionism. That is what he says. He says they're going to do Zionism. Zionism is what led them all to move. That's what he says. But in reality, that like he can't actually blame Zionism for this mistake, or this rewriting of history. And even and not only did he believe that, but then he played a clip of a guy who says that they were leaving because the IDF had or whatever it was at the time. I think it was the IDF. The IDF had like dropped some bombs around Jews, making them feel unsafe. And so Hasan presents this and is like, see, this is why they were leaving. Jews were attacking their own people to try to get them to run away. And then Ethan goes back and plays the same fucking guy saying, I just want to be clear. I am acknowledging that the IDF did some bad things here, but in no way am I saying that is why we fled from those countries. It was the government oppression that made us all flee from these countries. It was the expulsions that made us flee from these countries. It was not like these things in and of themselves. I just want to make sure that people know that happened. That's it. And so, yes, like he's like, willing to take these like snippets of things to present it in a very different way, while also claiming that he read that guy's entire fucking book. So it's just, there's too many things that like are just unexplainable.
Well, I mean, that one in particular, I think I kind of conceded this earlier as well. I think that's probably like the strongest one I've heard that like points to, kind of what I'd be more concerned about. But I mean, I'm not.
Yes, but if I give you, I just to be clear, these are like three different things that we're talking about so far, though, right? One is
but that's the one I'm saying. That one is the one that was the strongest. Yeah.
No, I'm saying these are three different things having to do with expulsion. Three different things. These are all separate lines of logic, separate things, separate positions that all kind of coalesce into like this larger position. But the but these are different examples of over and over and over. It's like it's over and over and over. He's got different examples of how he knows that they weren't being oppressed and that they just wanted to go do Zionism. And if it was just one position, just no, I don't think that happened. Okay, well, but that's not the case. That's the overall position. But he has a bunch of underlying positions that lead him to that conclusion. And these are all flawed as well.
I guess what I'd be curious about in those examples, I still think it sounds ignorant of him, but like, because I can imagine him talking about this and how like seeing those people, or like even if he had the capability to concede anything, like conceding that they were expelled and then went there and then did the Zionism. Like they got there.
That's where I was going, is that he wouldn't even concede this once it was proven to him. Like he still wouldn't even concede this. So yeah. Just yeah. But you're right. That's not out of line with his general disposition, because he's generally not capable of conceding anything, whether it has to do with Zionism or not. So that's not special.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Anyway, okay. That's interesting. It gives me some new stuff to think about. I didn't want to like stake a flag really, really deeply in any place here, because I am still kind of coming to my like emerging perspectives on a lot of the takes that we discussed here. But
yeah, sure.
That was a good.
Well, I think your best best hope going forward is to watch the Candace Owens documentary.
That's a good idea. I'll have to check that out. I really will. And in fact, I while I'm here, I'm glad you brought me on. I'm actually I'm going to be doing a big stream tomorrow night. I'm doing a debate, like a fun, it's kind of like a fun DC versus Marvel debate with an anti-flat earther guy on Sarah the Raging Tomatoes channel. But I think afterwards I'm going to do like a long kind of marathon stream for potentially up to like 24 hours at least. And
yeah, I saw you put a post on your channel, and I was confused as to what it was. I read your poster on there, and I wasn't really sure what it was. So that makes sense. Okay. Yeah,
so that's what's going on. Yeah, and it's I'm kind of I'm that guy. I went to that guy's channel, the guy I'm supposed to be debating. I hadn't seen any of his stuff. And I went to watch his stream. He was doing like a marathon stream the other day, and I saw his community, and I was like, oh, these are my people. Like this is like very like science interested, but like anti-Trump. It was just a very fun environment, like with people. I was like, oh, these people will vibe with what I'm trying to offer here, and so I'm gonna try to captivate some of his audience. I appreciate you bringing me on. It's always a pleasure chatting with you.
Dude. I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you for pulling my channel stuff. Yeah.
Awesome. Later, homie.
Everybody, talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay. I put Coder's link in the chat, so y'all go follow him. Fizz in my cup, swimming good love. It was you at the club, missed your touch. Go again, baby, what's up? Nothing feels right, so let's mess up everything.